Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, this game is difficult. It is punishing, and sometimes it can make you lash out in anger. It's okay, it happens to the best of us. But what if you could turn your screams of agony into a weapon, using your yelling to decimate the entire game? First things first, this build doesn't do the highest damage per button press, but what it does offer is a very high range, consistent form of significant damage. Through this combination of items, you can fully boost and maximize the potential of a specific skill that is surprisingly good if you haven't checked it out yet, an Ash of War called Beast's Roar. This skill has you scream and fire a projectile out in front of you, quite a decent range. The damage is slightly higher if you are close up to them, but that puts you in a more dangerous position, so weigh those options actively in the moment. The FP cost is ludicrously low for what it does, and in fact it costs more stamina than anything else. The wind-up speed is very quick, meaning anytime there is even a slight opening in a fight, you can bust this out safely knowing that you can roll away without being in danger. And it is spammable as all hell too. In PvP, this has some somewhat mixed results, entirely based on your opponent's ability to dodge roll. If they're able to dodge roll perfectly, they're fine. The screams come out extremely fast with good range and damage, so they need to be actively spamming the dodge roll button to actually dodge them. And if they can manage to close the gap to you without you getting away, then you can be punished. But all it takes is a little bit of outmaneuvering, one tiny mistake from them, using your range to your advantage to keep them at a distance until they slip up in some tiny way that you can come out on top, and this happens quite consistently. In PvE, it is way more consistent to hit the attack on enemies, and again, the main advantage is just the safety from which you can use this as your main method of attack and comfortably deck anything that you'll come across. What you're watching is mostly early game, new game plus bosses, so they are buffed health and damage, but the main thing that I want you to realize is just how low the recovery time is between my presses of this attack. If you are even decent at rolling, which unfortunately I'm not, and you play somewhat carefully, which again I'm not, I'm just trying to show you the highest damage I can get as quickly as possible, you can, however, absolutely avoid just being hit forever with this. The recovery time is really short. You won't get caught out mid-animation, and you can start it from a mile away from the boss too. Yes, it can kill things quickly, but its main advantage is that it can kill things quickly and safely.
And it's safe?
It's safe as milk.
On top of this, when things get a little bit too close for comfort, maybe a group of enemies approaches you all at once, two-hand your offhand axe, and the Ash of War that we've got on that is the Flame of the Redmanes, doing similar amounts of damage at short range in a cone, with very high stagger damage as well, and also being buffed by a certain part of the build that I will mention as we get into it properly. That said, first I'll show you what is in the build entirely so you know how it functions, then we will go over how to acquire each of those bits for yourself, then the ideal stat spread and a bit of playstyle advice. As has been mentioned, the star of the show is the Beast's Roar weapon skill. We boost it with the Highland Axe, which buffs the damage of our Roar abilities by 7.5%. Unfortunately, this doesn't actually stack if you have two of them equipped. I wanted this to be the case, but after various amounts of testing, it showed that having one Highland Axe equipped is the same effect as having two Highland Axes equipped as far as using the skill goes. On this main hand Highland Axe, you want to put Beast's Roar with Keen Affinity to make the weapon scale well with dexterity, as this Ash of War scales with dexterity and no other attribute. For the offhand, we definitely want a second axe so that we can power stance when we do wind up in melee situations, or God forbid we run out of FP, and the ideal one for this is the sacrificial axe, the main reason being that it can be infused with whatever Ash of War that we deem necessary, and it has the passive effect of restoring FP on kill, which allows us to use the Roar even more often without drinking flasks when clearing levels. The Ash of War that we put on here, as I mentioned before, is the Flame of the Redmanes, a short-range cone AoE fire attack that does a crazy amount of stagger damage. This is great for whenever anything comes up close to you and fits into our synergies at least a little bit. When putting this on the weapon, you want to choose fire affinity, as this affects the damage of the weapon skill a fairly noticeable amount. The talismans are, as you might expect, the Roar Medallion, which boosts the damage of this skill by around 15%, the Shard of Alexander, which boosts your weapon skill damage by around 15%, which includes the offhand skill as well, sacrificial, the ritual sword talisman, which boosts your damage as a whole by 10% when you're at full health, which normally is a bit of a tough task to ask, but given that this build is mostly built around a ranged attack, it is much easier to just avoid being hit by staying far, far away from your opponents. And then finally, the green turtle talisman, which boosts your stamina regeneration speed. This Ash of War uses a lot of stamina and you will absolutely be spamming it, so while this talisman isn't required, it definitely will be a big help to the quality of life while using this skill. Finally, we have the incantation that we use on a regular basis, not a pew pew, but a buff, and as such you don't need to have any specific seal to boost it or even have it particularly upgraded, as it won't change the bonus damage that you receive from the incantation, which is Flame Grant Me Strength. This buff gives you 20% physical attack power and 20% fire attack power boost for 30 seconds. The physical portion of this affects Beast Roar, but of course not the fire portion. However, the fire portion does affect the Ash of War on our offhand axe, Flame of the Redmanes, hence the choice of skill for that weapon. As for the armor, there isn't any armor pieces that buff roars in particular or weapon skills, so realistically just wear whatever you want to for fashion purposes. Look good. And that is every part of the build put together to buff each other. So where do you get each part? Well, the Highland axe comes from Stormvale Castle, specifically in the room with the many-armed Keymaster. From the Rampart Tower site of Grace, jump off of the roof directly in front of you, then fall down from there gracefully. Enter the room that's in front of that, and then go through the door in the back left, follow the walkway, and then jump over the railing in front. Under the massive painting lays a corpse, upon which will be the Highland axe if you haven't already picked it up. The Beast's Roar, Ashes of War, to put the skill on your weapon comes from Garank, the Beast Clergyman, in the Beast Sanctum in the northeast of Caelid. When you have given him 4 death roots, he will give you this Ash of War. If you want to know how to do that, check out our video on where to find the death roots linked down below. The offhand weapon, Sacrificial Axe, comes from a boss in the Weeping Peninsula region. From the Castle Morn Rampart site of Grace, first make sure that it is night and then head southwest while staying up on the hill, but inside of the wall until a Deathbird enemy spawns. Upon defeating this Deathbird enemy, you will receive for yourself this axe. The Ash of War for the offhand, Flame of the Redmanes, comes from an invisible scarab. Outside of the Fort Gale North site of Grace, just immediately forwards you will see the footprints on the floor. This one is fast but has a predictable pattern, so set up shop in its path and wait for it to come so you can kill it and pick up the Ash of War. While you're here, head behind Fort Gale itself to the south side to find 2 moving flamethrower face wagon guys. Behind them will be the Flame Grant Me Strength incantation. For the talismans, the easiest one to get is the Green Turtle Talisman, which comes from the Summon Water Village in Limgrave. On the southeast side, you'll find a staircase locked by a stone sword key. Go on down past that room full of dogs to open a door behind which is a chest containing this talisman. The next easiest one to grab is the Roar Medallion Talisman. This one is dropped by the boss at the end of the Limgrave Tunnels, a very early game dungeon. The next one is the Ritual Sword Talisman, which comes from the Lux Ruins in the Altus Plateau just next to the Erdtree Gazing Hill site of Grace. Head to the back left side of the ruins to find a staircase leading downwards to a boss fight. Defeat the boss that's inside and then claim the chest behind them to loot this for yourself. Finally of the talismans is the Shard of Alexander, which you get as a reward for finishing the Alexander questline. First you must kill Radon in the Great Desert in Caelid, and then after his fight, in the boss area itself you will find Alexander chowing down on fallen comrades. Talk to him and he'll move on to Eastern Liurnia. From the Artist Shack site of Grace, go south and through a small pond and over the hill to find Alexander submerged in the dirt. You can buy the crafting recipe for oil pots from this merchant in Siofra River, and once you have done that, use an oil pot on Alexander and then boop him out of the hole. Sometimes he doesn't show up at this stage of the quest for people. If you don't see him here, then just skip forwards to the next step, which is in Mount Gelmir. From the Seathwater Terminus site of Grace, head west and south to reach a bit of a magma pond area. In the back of the magma pond will be Alexander, just sort of standing in the kitchen taking the heat. Talk to him once more and then he will move one last time to the crumbling Farum Azula region of the game, which is a late game area. Once here, reach the Dragon Temple altar site of Grace, head out of the north exit of the room, drop down and run past the Wolfman, then jump through the window on the left left, progress forwards until you hit the corridor full of statues, and then take a right at the end up some stairs. Forwards and left from there, you'll find a stone sword key door leading to an elevator, atop which is a site of grace. From there, it is just a bit of a short walk forwards and upwards and to the right up atop some ruins to find Alexander waiting to talk to you. Talk with him, then fight with him, then be granted his shard for defeating him. As for how to play using this build, it is relatively standard. There are a lot of pieces to make it function together, but once you have the pieces, it sort of just runs really smoothly. If you know you're about to engage in combat, use Flame Grant Me Strength for 30 seconds of extra power. Hold the axes in both hands, Beast Roar to engage from a distance, keeping in mind that if you are within a certain range, it does more damage, but you will also probably be able to hit the button less times before you have to reposition, and making those decisions on the fly for yourself. Spam the attack as much as you can, and if anything ever gets a little bit too close for comfort, swap out to two-hand the offhand axe and use Flame of the Redmane, which while shorter range than the Beast Roar, does somewhat similar damage even on a single target, and does an exceptional amount of stagger damage too, which is the main thing here, being the main advantage that it has. Do your best to reposition to once again safely resume the Torrent of Roars, as that's the highest damage you have, using FP Flasks as necessary and Crimson Flask to top yourself up, obviously. When you are out of mana, don't fret too badly either. Your axes themselves, as melee weapons, do a decent amount of damage, especially as we are power stancing, allowing ourselves to have a strong secondary combat option just in case the main bread and butter doesn't quite cut it for some reason. As for the attributes that you want to have while using this build, your first goal is 40 dexterity, with the overall goal being 80 dexterity, as that is the hard cap on this affecting damage. Before reaching that, however, put a load of points into vigor, with the eventual goal being around 40. 15 points in mind for a little bit of casting leeway, exactly enough points in endurance to be able to do medium rolls with the 2 axes, a seal, the talismans, and your personal armor set of choice. 20 strength, base intelligence as it doesn't help us out at all, base arcane as it doesn't help us out at all, and then faith to 15, which allows us to use the Flame Grant Me Strength incantation. Past this, any points that you have are bonus levels, and they can go into vigor for more health or even endurance, so you can spam the roar a bit better without needing to pause for stamina breaks. And that just about covers it, everyone. A build made to weaponize your anger. Old man yells at Cloud, more like GigaChad Gamer roars Pogly until the mean pixel men die. Okay, I went too far and I know it. I've been Con Dinosaur from RageGamingVideos, and this has been the Beast Roar Bonanza build, maximizing this skill and turning it into a main form of offense. Do you like the idea of playing around yelling at people from a distance? What other Ashes of War do you think would be fun to frame your entire gameplay experience around? Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.